Nethrosh would cause death and destruction amongst the people of this land, if not stopped now. Unnamed Library Journal. Welcome, humble adventurers, to my realm of knowledge and mystery. Here, in my cursed library, are endless tomes and scrolls on the darkest and evilest foes in all the realms, be they from Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, the many worlds of darkness, or any realm in between. Welcome to the Dastardly Decimal System. I'm your caretaker of the corrupt, the librarian, Castor Cain. And supervising, as always, is Vega the cat. In 1925, radio was sweeping the nation. Everyone could listen to news, music, sports, and even daring heroic tales right in their own home. However, the appeal was not universal. There existed a group known as radiophobes who feared the unseen radio waves. Could these waves damage a person's body or corrupt their mind? To most people, this seemed insane, but to the folks of Rosebridge, Pennsylvania, this was a terrifying fact. For today's topic, I have brewed a pot of licorice tea. It's tea made from dried licorice roots, known for helping with ooze, ichor, and mucus output. I picked it up in a small, unheard-of town known as Pittsburgh? Sit down and have a cup as we talk about the eldritch abomination known as Nethrosh. Nethrosh is an eldritch abomination. It is a 10-meter long form of horrid, writhing midnight flesh. The smaller tentacles that run along the back of Nethrosh stick up like antennae and swivel about, giving them a sense of their surroundings. Ooze, mucus, and ichor drip off the form with each twitch and slither a tentacle does. In its center is a 2-meter high maw filled with repulsive teeth and putrid, sticky acid to aid in Nethrosh's digestion. The pile of horrid flesh seems to constantly shift and undulate, but Nethrosh cannot move. Instead, vine-like tentacles grab and pull their victims towards it for consumption. A single glimpse of Nethrosh will forever damage a person. Their sanity will be ruptured as their brain struggles to understand what it sees before it. Nethrosh is far from natural, and your body knows it, and your body fears it. Your body will be filled with an urge to destroy, or, and far more likely, an urge to flee. For those foolish enough to fight it, Nethrosh will use its vine-like tentacles to grab foes, smash them against walls or floors, or even pull them close in order to consume them. It's time to visit one of those realms in between. Once again, we find ourselves transported to the fearsome and terrifying realm of E-arth. This is a malicious realm where greed, bigotry, and hate thrive. Earth is so frightening that there are countless splinters of it. There are western splinters filled with monsters and magic known as the Deadlands. There are other splinters filled with caped heroes, colorful villains, and mutants and masterminds. The splinter we look at is a glimpse into their past, to a splinter haunted by the eldritch horrors. These ancient creatures, older than time, infect the populace with madness and insanity. Chief among them is the Great Old One, whose cultists thrive as they hear the Call of Cthulhu. Discussing the origins of the Elder Gods and their abominations is never an easy task, or a safe one. The very nature of the Elder Gods means that the more you learn of them, the more susceptible to madness you are. And while few librarians think of themselves as sane, I would like to keep what little remaining sanity I have exactly where it belongs. Deep in the state of Pennsylvania, an hour outside of Pittsburgh, lies the small town of Rosebridge. 2 miles from the town is a forest that houses the Black Cider Caves. For centuries, Nethrosh has been slumbering in those caves. He would awaken, emit a sound akin to a low static, and, with no response, would feed on a nearby animal before returning to its slumber. This routine changed, however, when it awoke in the 1920s. Nethrosh awoke, emitted his low static sound, and was prepared to return to sleep when he realized that humans had finally invented a device that could hear him. For the first time in centuries, he could reach and control a human's mind, and it all occurred through the radio. With the invention of vacuum tube radios, Nethrosh's signal could take over the mind of a human and control them. Nethrosh's first attempts were disastrous. Nethrosh overwhelmed the mind of their first victim, a woman named Verna Starr, melting her brains and killing her. She died with a blank expression on her face and blood dripping from her ears. Nethrosh's next attempts left the victims either motionless or acting erratically. But it's okay, because Nethrosh is learning. With each attempt, he is studying humans, learning how they operate, and fine-tuning his approach. His radio-controlled humans moved in jerky motions, or, if Nethrosh had simply forgotten about them, they stood motionless and unblinking. His humans cannot speak, but they can project past or current radio broadcasts. They stretch open their mouths as wide as possible, until essentially they become a speaker for the radio. Nethrosh uses his humans to control others, killing those who are attempting to thwart their plans, and bringing the controlled humans to the cave so he can feast on them. With each human he eats, he regains his power. The stronger he is, the further across the country his controlling signal can go. Once he gains enough power, the entire world will be under his control. Sheriff Diego Pullman used to be a Pittsburgh police officer before switching to small-town policing. The big city had its fair share of horrors, so he was happy to move to the quiet country. When he was called in to investigate the death of Verna Starr, he quickly suspected the occult. Knowing his police were not experienced with that, he called in a group of investigators. They arrived into town and instantly started witnessing the weird. After nearly hitting a man on the road, they found a guy named Benny Waters standing motionless. They checked him for injuries, but suddenly his mouth opened and he began to emit sound of a Pirates baseball broadcast. Then Benny's ears began to bleed before he collapsed on the ground, dead. With 2 dead bodies showing the same wounds, Sheriff Pullman was more convinced something occult was going on. The investigators started at Verna Starr's house. The housewife had died while cleaning the house. When they inspected the radio, a device she only used while cleaning, they found the vacuum tubes to be unnaturally cold. the investigators went to Benny Waters' hut. There they found the home of a lifelong Pittsburgh Pirate fan, one who would drop all other activities to listen to every game on the radio. Upon investigating the device, they too found the vacuum tubes to be unnaturally cold. By now, Nethrosh had learned of the investigators and had tried to stop them. They sent a controlled woman named Paula Fonro. She approached the investigators with a hidden blade. She tried to stab the party, only to fail. Outmatched by the investigators, she opened her mouth and began to emit a song called The Farewell Blues, before suddenly starting to bleed from her ears and dying. Now suspicious of the vacuum tube radios, the investigators retreated to the library to learn what they could. There, after hours of research, they learned of the differences between vacuum tubes radios and crystal sets. They also come across an unnamed journal from the settlers of Rose Ridge, dating back to 1840. The journals talked about a dangerous entity known as Nethrosh, who reveled in death and destruction. The investigators eventually learned of Nethrosh hiding in the Black Cider Caves and began their journey towards him. They used a crystal set radio as a guide. Immune to Nethrosh interference, the crystal set would only cause a warble sound when facing in the right direction. This made it the perfect guide. If they took a correct turn in the cave, the warble grew stronger. The caverns were dark and deep and felt endless in length. There was no light in the caves and the gaps were tight and cramped. This forced the investigators to squeeze through some areas and duck under others during their claustrophobic journey. Tendrils of roots would seemingly shift, brushing against the investigator and terrifying them. All of this occurred as unsettling jazz music echoed throughout the entire cavern. The first thing they noticed when they entered Nethrosh's lair was the stench. It was a vile smell, with hints of burning flesh, rotting remains, and a vomit-inducing mucus. While the investigators struggled with the nostril assault, Nethrosh attacked. Vine-like tentacles lashed out, slamming some of the investigators against the wall, knocking others off their feet, and one even grabbing an investigator and simply squeezing them until something inside of them cracked. The investigators fought back, armed with rifles, revolvers, and blades. When Nethrosh lost the advantage, it let out a low, static sound, one that summoned the radio-controlled townsfolk to its defense. Now the investigators were trapped in two battles. One was against the villagers who they did not want to kill, and the other was against Nethrosh, who they very much wanted dead. When the final shot rang out, and Nethrosh was defeated, all of its tentacles went limp, and black ichor seeped from the cracks in Nethrosh's flesh. Those that had been controlled found their minds freed, and their memories hazy of what had just happened. Those that were injured suddenly started screaming out in pain. Despite the death and loss, Rosebridge survives. The remaining citizens are desperate to be rid of their radios, causing a surprising amount of second-hand radios to appear for sale in Pittsburgh. This event has caused a lingering hesitation for the townsfolk to adapt to new technology. This lingering hesitation has existed for generations, and exists even after the memories of what caused it had faded away. But is Nethrosh actually gone? The only way to properly destroy the aberration would be to burn the body after it was killed. If it wasn't, however, Nethrosh would slowly reform in the passing years. It would return weaker than before, but far wiser. When Nethrosh returns, it will try again, but far more cautiously. After learning what can occur when it attracts too much attention, Nethrosh will operate slower, nabbing fewer people at once, feeding more sparingly, and even perfecting its control on the human mind. Eventually, it would cause towns to become ghost towns, but when one town had been completely consumed, it would expand its reach to another. As years became decades, and the centuries turned over once again, Nethrosh would continue its plan, evolving as the technology did. The internet, Wi-Fi, smartphones, and even the dreaded 5G. Just how far had its control and corruption reached? It seems that our tea has run out. I hope this aids in your investigations into the occult. Please, though, be cautious. When dealing with the occult, knowledge can be a dangerous thing. But if you have any more questions, join me again in my library for more stories and lore about the darkest villains from the darkest realms. This has been the Dastardly Decimal System, and once again, I'm your librarian, Castor Cain. And with me as always is Vega. Do you love the Dastardly Decimal System and want to support us? Check out our new Patreon. Members will get access to show notes, official artwork, our new bonus episode series called Cleaning Up After Tea Time, and of course, plenty of cat pics of Vega voice actors Vash and Zid. You'll even be able to suggest a topic for future episodes. Check it out at patreon.com/Dastardly Decimal System. If you're not financially able and still want to support us, suggest the show to a D&D loving friend. It really helps us get noticed. The Dastardly Decimal System can be found on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and now BlueSky at DD System Podcast. That's Delta Delta System Podcast. Drop us a message and say hi. Vega always loves the attention. This podcast was produced by Midnight Reading Audio, a division of Midnight Reading Publishing. The voice of Castor Cain is Larry Gent. Hi. The voice of Vega is provided by my cats, Vash and Zid. Music was Alone with the Darkness by Lee Robinson from Pixabay.com, licensed under the Creative Commons. Today's adventure, Radio Killed Furnace Star. This was done by author Michael Schall. Thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.